Welcome back. Let's say a user cannot remember their password. Well, to get them a new password, we're going to use the email address associated with that account. So first they'll need to click on the forgot password. They'll need to enter the email address, hit submit, and we're going to give them a message saying, hey, check email for reset password. So we go ahead and open up our email. And if we take a look at this link here, it's going to have, we're at localhost. We have a particular path that we're using, and then we're going to grab our username, and we're going to go ahead and grab this email verification password. And that's how we're going to verify that this incoming link just isn't from anywhere, that someone knows this very particular long, lengthy password, that matches this particular user. So we know this is the person. So we're going to go ahead and click change password. Go ahead and confirm. And we're going to go ahead and put in a new password. And hit submit. Why not? Password was successfully updated. So here we go. We are logged in. All right. Let's go ahead and take a look at our code. All right. Anyone looking at this for the first time, just a reminder, we have several packages here that are part of package main. So if you use go run main.go, that's not going to work. You need to use go run space and then the dot. So that way everything that is a package main, like this one's, for instance, will also run, because we have everything spread out just to organize our code a little bit better. Let's go ahead and take a look at our routes. Okay, so our first route here are for password recovery. If we go to that, as you can see, it's simply just going to, we're using the HTML method. We're going to give it a status code, and we're just going to render our recovery form, and we're not passing in any data. So if we take a look at that, recovery is just a form. We're taking an email address, and then when they hit submit, we're going to be going at the path password recovery, and this one's going to be a post method. So if we go back up to the top here, so the first one was also password recovery, but it was a get method. When we hit submit, this one's going to be a post method. So the first one was this recovery get handler, but the second one, when we hit the submit button, that's going to initiate the handler. Is going to be the recovery post handler. So let's go to that. And of course, we want to grab that email that we had in there. We have a little convenience function here that we've created that just simply is just going to select all the information depending, by what the email address is. And so we can populate our variable u, which is of type user. So we're just going to go ahead and grab all those fields. We're also going to create a new email verification password. So this way we can take this. Let's go ahead and just take a look at that one here. So this is just going to return our verification password, our verification hash. The hash we're going to save into the database, while the verification password, well, we're going to send that in the link. Then we're going to compare later when that link comes in. We're going to grab this inside of that link. We're going to compare that password versus the hash, just like we would with a regular password. And of course, we're going to return an error should there be a problem. And this one we covered in a previous video. We're just going to make a real long password. Since we're making this one ourselves, we can make it as secure as we want. If you want to take a deeper dive into that one, go ahead and check out one of the previous videos where we do that. Anyway, so we're going to go ahead and return our email verification password, and then we're going to go ahead and take that verification hash for our email. We're going to go ahead and just put that into that verification hash field on our user variable, and we'll save that into the database later in the code. So if something was to go wrong, we're just going to go ahead and communicate this ourselves. Usually we log that, but being we're not in production, and we'll just say, hey, we had a bad request. We're going to go ahead and render the recovery.html template again, and we're going to pass in this message, unable to send recovery email, please try again. Now we're going to go ahead and create a transaction. So instead of just using VB for our connection to our database, we're going to go ahead and create a transaction because we want to make sure when we save this into the database, well, say if we run into an error sending out our email, well, we want to be able to roll those back. So we're going to go ahead and create our transaction. And should we run into an error creating it, well, we're just going to go ahead and roll back. And we're just going to send the user back to the recovery.html page. And again, our message, unable to send recovery email. Go ahead and defer our rollback. We're going to go ahead and give the user 2 hours to go ahead and recover recover their account. Now, you can change this time to more or less. You wouldn't want to make this a super long time because at some point, yes, that email address can become vulnerable. Yes, I know that someone could go to the website and just say, hey, go ahead and send me another one. Wouldn't actually hurt if, like some websites where before they send a recovery email like that, sometimes they might ask you a few questions like, what was your first pet's name? What was the first school you went to or something like that? Anyway, we're still going to go ahead and put a little timeout limit on that. We're going to go ahead and prepare our statement. So update users. So if we take a look at that. So here's our database users with ID, username, email, password hash, created at, is active. Verification hash, this is the one that we're going to be using to make sure, not only when they verify their email, but also for email recovery. So we have our timeout down there as well. So we're going to go ahead and update the users table. We're going to set the verification hash to whatever we pass in and the timeout to whatever we pass in, where email is equal to what that third item we pass in. And some more boilerplate code. If we run into an error, we're going to run transaction.rollback. Let's roll everything back. And just in case there is an error on that, well, we're going to go ahead and check. So if this error is not equal to nil, which we're populating the error right here first before we check the if statement, we're going to go ahead and print ourselves a message, and we're going to go ahead and send the user back to the recovery.html page saying, hey, we ran into an issue. We defer closing this statement. We're going to go ahead and execute the statement. So remember on this statement, we're going to go ahead and update the verification hash. We're going to go ahead and update the timeout, and we're going to go ahead and search by the user's email. So we want to make sure this email exists. We don't want to blindly send an email. For one, we don't want to send emails to addresses that don't exist, and we don't want to send emails to people who don't want them. We want to keep a good reputation for sending emails, and we don't want to be labeled as spam. So we want to make sure it's only users who are inside our database, only people who are users already. So we'll go ahead and execute that statement. Should the number affected not equal to 1, it should equal to 1. If it equals anything else, we know we've ran into a problem. Again, we're going to go ahead and roll back and send the user back to the recovery page. Also, if there should be no error while we're updating, again, we're going to roll back and we're going to send them to that recovery page so they can try again. We're going to go ahead and prepare our email to send out. And for the subject, we're going to say it's the account recovery. And we're going to go ahead and create our little HTML here. Our domain name is, go ahead and check in a previous video. This one we're using localhost, but we're setting this with the environment variables, as you can see here. We're setting a bunch of these different things depending on saying, hey, if we're on a local or a remote machine. But anyway, let's go back. But go ahead and put in, what your domain is there. And the path that we're going to be using here is the account path is account recovery. And then we're going to go ahead and tack on the username and the email verification password as you saw here. So we're tacking on that username and this email verification password, which we created over here. And the text for this hyperlink just says change password. And then we're going to go ahead and use on our user variable, we're going to go ahead and send email, which this is one we created, which takes a subject, an HTML body. And basically it's just going to go ahead and pass everything we need for sending our email. If you want to take a deeper look at this, we've covered this in we have a couple different videos for sending email. If you were using a less secure app, believe you have to have an app password for this to work now. You should be using one anyway, but just a heads up for anyone who might be running into some trouble there. Also, we're using HTML. So when it comes to the content type, it needs to be text/HTML, or that HTML inside the email is not going to render properly. It's just going to think it's plain text if you don't change that. So we're going to go ahead and send our email. If it sends fine, we will not get an error. But if we do get an error, again, we're going to roll back and send the user back to the recovery .html template. And finally, if everything goes fine, we're going to go ahead and commit our changes in the database. Should there be a problem with the commit, we're going to go ahead and check that error. So basically, commit error is going to be populated here first. And if is going to ask, hey, if commit error is not equal to nil, well, go ahead and run this chunk of code here, which means we're just going to go ahead and send the user back to that page. And we're going to give a little message to ourselves saying, hey, something went wrong during that commit. But should everything run fine, we're going to go ahead and render our template. We're going to say status code OK. And we're going to use the check email.html template. And we're not going to be passing in any information. So if we go to that one, it's just going to say, hey, check for email to reset password. So that was that one we had seen after we entered our email address. Let's go ahead and go back to that. So once we hit that, it sends that email with that link in it. When we hit that link, let's go back to the top. We click on that link. Well, that one's going to be handled at this path. Remember, it was account recovery. We had a username and we had a verification password. So these are the two things that we are grabbing out of there. So this is the one that checked everything and then sent the email. Then us clicking on the link in the email. Well, this is what's getting activated. It's a get method, and it's at account recovery. We have a username and a verification password. So let's go ahead and go to that real quick. And we are on our gen.context variable. We are using the param method to grab that username and that verification password out of that link. So we're going to go ahead and have a variable u, which is of type user. We're going to go ahead and get that by username from that username that we have inside of that link. And if there's an issue, then we're going to go ahead and send them back to recovery again and tell them something went wrong. We're going to go ahead and make sure that they have the correct password. So again, we're going to use the bcrypt package compare hash and password. So we have this verification hash, which we looked up right here. Our little convenience function. It's just grabbing all that user data and populating those fields on our variable here, including that verification hash that we're using for our email. So we're checking what's in the database versus that verification password we got inside of that link. And if they don't match, we know something funny might be afoot, and we're just going to go ahead and send them back to the recovery.html page. We go ahead and get the current time, and we have timeout as it's of type time in the time package, the time data type. And for this one, well, we're going to go ahead and take in timeout. If we take a look at our types, we just have everything, so we can pull it real quick out of the database as just strings. But if you want to, you can change this to time.time as just a little bit of parsing, should you put stuff back into the database. But anyway, being that I have this in a string format after pulling it from the database, well, I want to go ahead and put this into the time package's time data type, the time data type, which timeout is going to go ahead and hold that. So that way we can update that. Okay, we're going to see if we run into an error parsing it. Again, we'll send them back to that same page. We're going to use the current time, which is of, in the time package, the type time, and we're going to use the after method, and after reports whether the time instant t is after you. So we want to make sure that current time is not after. If it is after, we know we've gone past that time limit and we need to send them back, and they need to go ahead and start it over again. Actually, we should probably have a little better message here. I guess we could say the link has expired. Anyway, we'll go ahead and change that here a little later. All right, we have a little mistake here. This is actually supposed to be, we're sending them back to the change password template so they can change their password. Means that everything was okay. Go ahead and change that. And we're passing in the user information and the link verification password. So we put down .user, we'll have access to everything after that for user. If we put down verification password, we'll just have that link verification password. So let's go ahead and take a look at changepassword.html. Okay, so we're going to get, as you saw, we had two different fields. We had, one password and a re-enter password, which, we're just using as password 1 and password 2. We want to make sure they're both the same. Now, to make sure that the submit, when they hit submit, it's going to go at this path, email, change password, and then we're going to go ahead and tack on the username and the verification password. Now, we want to make sure that it's not just someone's, sending this from somewhere else. We want to make sure we're still checking that that verification password still goes with that username. We don't want people, just passing in this link and, and plus you would need to know which user they're referring to anyway. So they hit submit. It's going to go at path, email change password. Going to be giving the username and the verification password in there, and it's going to be a post method. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. Go back to the top. Okay, so that was the email changed password. Okay, so that email change password, and they go ahead and pass that in, username and the verification password. Let's go take a look at that. Again, we're going to go ahead and use the param method to grab that username and verification password from the, from our path here. We're going to go ahead and use that username to go ahead and get all of that information from the username. Particularly, we'll need that verification hash so we can check it. If there's something wrong, we're going to go ahead and send the user back to the changepassword.html page and let them know what was wrong. Now we need to go ahead and pass these back so that way that link can get populated again. We're going to go ahead and compare the incoming verification password with the verification hash in the database. So again, we have our verification hash from the database, and inside that link we had our link verification password. So we want to go ahead and check those two. If it doesn't match, well, we're going to go ahead and send them back to the change passwords. Those two do need to match. We need to make sure only the user will have access to that, so we want to make sure no one else does. We're going to use .post form here because this is part of the form where, remember, these were inside of the link. And we're going to grab password 1 and 2. We're going to make sure that they are the same so it wasn't misentered. If not, we're going to go ahead and send the user back. And we're going to go ahead and validate the password. So we're going to go ahead and populate user.password with password 1. And then we're going to go ahead and use the same validate password code that we had used in a previous video. Did it take me to there? There we go. And again, this one in short is just looking for a hard to guess complex password. So it's going to look at how much entropy, how much complexity there is in there. So as long as the password is complex enough, it's going to be hard to guess. If it's a very simple or has too many repeating combinations, it's too easy to guess and it won't accept it. But anyway, so we're going to go ahead and make sure the new password is complex enough. If not, we'll go ahead and send the user back to the changepassword.html page. We're going to go ahead and generate, being everything looks good, we're going to go ahead and generate a new hash from this password. And we're going to go ahead and use the bcrypt default cost. If you're worried of a lot of computational power, as computers advance, you'd want to increase that bcrypt default cost. But we're going to go ahead and create our hash and save our hash into the database. So we're going to go and create that. Again, we're going to send the user back should we run into an error. We're going to go ahead and make that into a string so we can put it into our field here. Then we're going to go ahead and run the update password hash. And this one's just simply going to update user's password hash where the ID is equal to whatever that user ID is. We're going to go ahead and execute it. And should we run into a problem, we're just going to return error. And if we return an error, well, something went wrong, and we're just going to go ahead and handle that error by sending them back to the changepassword.html template. But should everything run fine, well, then we're going to go ahead and use the HTML method. Say HTTP status code OK, everything went great. We're going to go ahead and send it back to the login page. And we're going to go ahead and pass in on our GenH map here. We're going to go ahead and pass in our message saying, password successfully updated. Please log in. So if we go to login, that's where our message gets passed in there at the end, and then the user can log in. So in summary, you're going to have one handler that's going to go ahead and display your form where they can enter that email address. When they hit submit, it's going to go ahead and be a post method, so it can be at the same path. We'll just have a different handler handle that. We're going to go ahead and make sure that email address exists so we don't send it to someone who doesn't. Should everything check out, we're going to go ahead and send that email. We're also going to go ahead and set a new verification hash as well. We're going to go ahead and set a timeout on that so it doesn't sit in their inbox forever, where it can just be used at any point should a hacker get access to it later. When they click the link inside the email address at this path, well, it's going to have that built-in username and verification pass that we put in there. We're going to go ahead and retrieve that with the param method, and then we're going to go ahead and check to make sure with that username that yes, that is the verification password that matches, that verification hash that this user has in the database matches this verification password that we got in the link. If that's all good, we're going to go ahead and send them to the change password.html page. We're going to go ahead and enter a new password. If the new password looks like it's okay, again, we're going to go ahead and check, make sure that yes, that with this username, their verification hash is it coincides with the verification password. And if so, we're going to go ahead and make that change. Go ahead and create a new hash from the new password, and then we'll go ahead and save that in the database, send the user back to the login page, and then they can go ahead and log in with the brand new password. So I hope that was helpful. Yes, these can be a little bit wordy, so sorry about that. But if you like the content, please like, share, and subscribe. Big thank you to everybody who's been helping the channel out lately. So thank you. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.